We are in the class Practical Proverbs for Daily Living. And we started the class last week. I appreciate Hiram kicking that off. And you can help me out as we get into, we're going to kind of walk through the book of Proverbs, but it's somewhat thematic. We're going to look topically. And what Hiram said he did was kind of introduce the book of Proverbs last week and talk about the fear of the Lord. If you are a note taker or you just have a photographic memory, what did y'all discuss last week with regard to the fear of the Lord and how it impacts daily living? I don't know who was here last week. Maybe you all said I wasn't here last week. 7 days, 168 hours, and that's a long time. I wasn't here, and I had to sing it recorded, so anything you can give me would be helpful.
Mistakes people make when reading Proverbs.
Okay.
Authorship of Proverbs and the irony of the people calling.
Okay, we're going to touch on that a little bit today on the subject we're going to deal with.
Chapter 1, verses 1 through 7.
Okay. All right, so this is a good place for us to pick up, because go ahead and turn your Bibles to Proverbs chapter 1. We're going to begin in verse 8. And I have called this, you can see it on the slide in front of you, Pursuing Knowledge and Avoiding Folly. A lot of what we're going to do as we walk through is to look at some of the great things in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs, like James, is often seen in isolation. People believe that it's a bunch of pithy, short sayings, and it misses the fact that there are huge themes. And oftentimes, in context, more than one thing is being said on the subject. For example, we get Proverbs chapter 15, and it is one of the things we'll talk about is our speech and our tongue and how it either produces good in our life or works against us. I thought that, and of course Solomon being inspired gives us the template for this. This is a great place to begin. And as I said a few moments ago, we're going to try to tailor a lot of what we say to the general life stage that you're in if you are a young adult. And I know as I look out, there are young adults who are of different stripes and ages and so forth. Some of you, we use that term very loosely, but you're in some of the same stages of life. Not all of you. I recognize some of you are single in this class, and that's great. This will still apply. That some of you are younger than others, but you may have children that are in the same approximate age range. And you're in kind of the same phase of life. And so what Solomon says to you in this class is going to be helpful. And I thought we'd begin today's class by asking the question, what was the best advice that you ever received? Or that you have received up to this point? Something that somebody told you that made a big difference in, maybe it was a turning point in your life.
If you're not changing it, you're choosing it.
All right, so what did you take from that? What did you understand from that advice?
Basically, if you're not working to get better or move towards something different, you're going to stay where you are.
Okay.
Whatever situation that is, whatever job that is, whatever, anything.
You know, a lot of times that's said with regard to culture. If you're not changing it, you're choosing it. Why are church cultures the way that they are? Why are business cultures the way that they are? And a lot of that is because it's more painful to change than it is to choose what you have, even if you hate what you have. But when it gets intolerable enough, you'll reject the one for the other. So sometimes what seems painful on the front end is a choice that we make for something better. Good. I think that's solid advice. And it kind of fits with where we're going to go in Proverbs 1 and 2. Any other sage advice that you received?
Yeah, kind of similar. Like, you can only control what you do, and you can't control what anybody else does.
Yeah.
Usually, what it told to me, emotions-wise, and how you react to things, and how people treat you, and that kind of stuff.
That's very liberating, isn't it? That you're not responsible for the actions of others, how you respond to it, it's huge. And it brings a lot of peace. A lot of stress we bring into our lives is because we own what other folks do, or we let it materially affect the decisions that we make, and we can get caught in the vortex of other folks' drama. Anything else? Go ahead.
If you're going to do a job, do it well.
All right. A job worth doing is worth doing well. That's, I think, one that really helps us in the occupational phase. We're going to talk about how Solomon's words impacts relationships, occupation, and so forth.
In regards to reading the Bible, I've always been advised a approach it ready to approach it with the mindset that you can be proved wrong.
Okay. All right. So the humility and open-mindedness to say, I don't have this all figured out. You know, you obviously are going to churn on and think about some other good advice that you have received. And a lot of it is going to find its roots principally or even close to a quotation in what we see in Scripture. And Proverbs is just one of those places where a lot of what people live and do, they find rooted in what Solomon says in the book of Proverbs. Let me just share a few that I received. One was from George Bailey, not the character in the Christmas movie, but he was a preacher. And it really, although the three pieces I want to share with you real quick are from preachers, they really are not restricted to preaching. The first one that George Bailey said was, work when you don't have to, or you will have to work when you don't want to. I thought that was really good. So often we are delaying our goals. We aren't working hard now. We think that that's something we'll do later, whether it's goals, maybe it has to do with financial goals that you have, occupational goals. And so you just kind of skim by on your intellect, and you don't apply yourself, kind of choose or accept advice. And if you will work hard now, there will come a time when you don't have the energy. You don't have the time left. And other things happen in your life. I thought that was good. Wendell Winkler was a Bible teacher I had at Faulkner University. And he was saying this to preachers, but I think it applies to each and every one of us. He would take Matthew 16:26 and he would alter it to apply to us as we look at family life. And the way he would say that is, what shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own family? Or what will a man give in exchange for his family? Of course, Jesus originally said what? What shall a man give in exchange for his soul? All right, but what's true of that's true of what are we willing to give up in our professional life or to pursue that will cause us to give up what's most important. The folks you have the most control over and influence in their lives is your home, your family. And so we've got to make sure that we never sacrifice them for whatever we're pursuing in our public life. The third one was from a mentor of mine, and while it was used in the context of evangelism, I think it's true in any conversation and situation. It is never a matter of who's right. It's a matter of what's right. It's not me versus you, my way versus your way. It's what does the Bible say? What does Christ indicate to us? And so I want you to think about the fact that we all have access to wisdom all the time. People are sharing it with us. They're demonstrating it for us. And wisdom on our part is the ability to be open to and to hear the counsel, the advice, and the guidance that comes from other folks. I thought it would be a helpful thing for us to start, as we look at wisdom, and we look at it a lot today, is to define the word. How would you, or how have you heard it defined? Wisdom.
Maybe knowledge through experience.
Okay, so knowledge may be wedded to experience. It's not just knowing something, but it's leveraging what you've experienced in the past so as to know how to use that knowledge.
Like applicable knowledge that you understand a situation and how you can apply it. Or like you understand, you have this knowledge, but then you can apply it to a specific situation. Even if you haven't experienced it, and the experience obviously is great, but to be able to say, this is what you should do in this situation, or how someone should react, or here's the good and the bad that comes with this situation, depending on what you choose.
Okay, so the practical application of knowledge. All right, and that's probably the one that I have often heard that gives that. Now, in Proverbs, if you want to take the word wisdom that's found there on multiple occasions, one of the key words, obviously, in the book of Proverbs, it means the capacity to understand and to have skill in living, implying sticking to a set standard. So I think that incorporates some of the elements. But what I find interesting is how other Old Testament passages kind of expound on wisdom, give us further definition. For example, you have Moses in the book of Deuteronomy. In Deuteronomy, they have wandered through the wilderness for 40 years. The next generation is about to arise. They're going to go into the promised land, and so Moses is giving them final preparation. And in Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 6, here's what Moses says. He says, so keep and do them. He's talking about the commandments and the statutes and the judgments of the old law. For that is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples who will hear all these statutes and say, surely this is a great nation and is a wise and understanding people. So it's something that people can see, right? Can't you see one who is wise? Have you ever assessed and looked at the situation and say, I can't believe they're being so foolish? And one of the things that you inevitably tie it to is understanding. So both of the definitions, the one that Brianna gave and that Tyler gave, both focus on the idea that knowledge by itself is not alone, but is not enough. But what do you do with it? Do you have an understanding to be able to process what you're given and to use it in your marriage, if you're married? Use it in your child rearing. Use it in your job. Do you understand? And how do you understand? God's got to give you the framework. All right, so that's one way that Proverbs wisdom is further defined in other places. And the other has to do, ironically, with Solomon. Remember the Solomon situation? Solomon is about to ascend to the throne, and what does God offer him? Anybody remember in 1 Kings chapter 3? Solomon doesn't initiate this. God does. God offers Solomon what?
The choice.
What's the choice?
What do you want, riches or?
Yeah, so he actually names wealth as one of the things that he can say, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. And what's Solomon's response? What does he want? Wisdom. He says, I'm a child. I don't know how to govern this great people. And, of course, we understand that God says the things you didn't ask for, I'm going to give to you anyway, and he does. And we're going to see that in Solomon's life. But I want to point you to something that's said in 1 Kings chapter 4 and verse 29. This is kind of the writer of Kings summary of Solomon's request, God granting that, and all that follows. It says in 1 Kings 4:29, now God gave Solomon wisdom and very great discernment and breadth of mind like the sand that is on the seashore. So look at the other elements involved in wisdom here. God gave him very great discernment. What's discernment?
Finding truth within the text.
Okay, when it applies to Bible knowledge, it's finding the truth that's in the text. So it's working through what it says and understanding what it means. But in life, what's discernment? You do that all the time.
Being able to sift through and see true intent behind superficial.
All right, so many good elements in what you said. Sifting through, that's discernment. Looking at what is presented to you and being able to categorize, is this something that I need to follow or not? And you think about how often that happens in your life every day. You've got to do that. You're presented with options. The culture gives it to you all the time. In the workplace, you are given options, just continually, and you've got to have the wisdom to discern, to sift through all that. A lot of it's in real time. You've got to make these decisions very quickly, and they can have a big impact on what happens in your life after that. But he says something else. God gave him discernment, wisdom with discernment, and breadth of mind. What's the 21st century way of saying that? What would be breadth of mind?
Always a peace.
Okay, I think maybe that's a result of that. But let's kind of break it down. Breadth.
It's a broad understanding.
Broad understanding. We might say, now this is with qualification, an open mind. Right? Here's what happens as you get older. The mind is a lot more closed. You're not as adaptable to change in general. Don't contextualize that. Change can be good, change can be bad. But just in a general sense, when you hear an opposing viewpoint, are you automatically just shutting that out? Or as you're exposed to everything, are you doing so with a broad mind to try to make sure to not jump to conclusions, to not let those little filters that we have in our life to just automatically cause us to discount? Maybe it's based on how somebody looks, or maybe based on their age, or maybe based on their status in society. But Solomon, and we're going to see this in his reign, has breadth of mind. He's broad-minded, open enough to be able to discern. Now, what's going to help us to have a proper broad mind is to be informed. The more we can know the mind of God, the better and the more broad our mind is going to be. For Solomon, I want you to think about what that meant. He had a broad mind. He had discernment in politics, in the military, in economics, in farming, in writing, and in spiritual things. He understood and succeeded in many different ways. And the question is, who doesn't want that? Do you want to be successful? Would you like to achieve success in every area of life that defines you? And of course you do. How do you achieve that? Do you want success socially? Would you like to have success financially? How about emotionally? How about physically? Would you like success spiritually? Do you want to thrive in your relationships? And of course, because the answer to all of these is yes, I want success in all those ways, the question then follows, how does that happen? How am I going to get that, achieve that in my life? And so that's where Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8 through chapter 2 and verse 22 comes in, because here Solomon focuses on pursuing knowledge and avoiding folly. And if you wanted to put a header on this, that was really the original title that I had, is Pursue Knowledge and Avoid Folly. And I want you to see how he focuses on the importance of wise guidance, and especially the wisdom to guard against greed and sinful influences. It's going to be a thing that will repeat as we look at our text this morning. There are going to be people that are in your path every day that are going to be relying on purely human wisdom. And they're going to try and help you find success on those terms. And as Jesus puts it, and this is the real way he puts it, what shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? You can be judged to be a success by every person that you know and be judged a failure by the only one whose thoughts matter. So Solomon tries to help his son to see how he can avoid the folly and to choose wisdom. So all we're going to do is look at two things in class today. There are three developments of both of those things. The first one's in chapter 1. So the first thing is, if you go ahead and turn to Proverbs chapter 1, we're going to begin in verse 8. And what Solomon does first in regards to this is he shows three things to do to avoid some foolish, unforced errors. Any tennis or pickleball players in here? What's an unforced error in that context?
Your error leading to the other team's point or other person's point.
All right, so we think about what an opposite of that would be is if somebody else is serving and they ace, right? They hit it, you don't even get a racket on it. That's not an unforced error. An unforced error is when you actually put your, and there maybe volleyball and maybe some other sports that I just don't know those sports as well, but you get a racket on the ball and you hit it into the net or you hit it out of bounds, that's an unforced error. So Solomon says in life, and isn't it true? Isn't it true in your life that sometimes things happen to you and you have no control over them at all, and you have to live in the consequence, or somebody does something to you that's not your fault, and you have to live with it? All of us have been there. But aren't there situations in life where you are responsible for the problems that come into your life? Decisions that you make, choices. So Solomon is speaking to his son. We don't have any idea how old Solomon is precisely, or how old his son is. He's mature enough to be able to receive the training. So I want us to notice what he says to him. First of all, let's look at verse 8 through 19. All right, Solomon says, "Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. Indeed, they are a graceful wreath to your head and ornament about your neck. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, 'Come with us, let us lie in wait for blood, let us ambush the innocent without cause, let us swallow them up alive like Sheol or the grave, even whole as those who go down to the pit. We will find all kinds of precious wealth. We will fill our houses with spoil. Throw in your lot with us. We shall all have one purse. My son, do not walk in the way with them. Keep your feet from their path. For their feet run to evil, and they hasten to shed blood. Indeed, it is useless to spread the baited net in the sight of any bird. They lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush their own lives. So are the ways of everyone who gains by violence. It takes away the life of its possessors." Now, I want you to look at that for a moment. and see if you can find some nuggets of wisdom that Solomon gives to avoid foolish and unforced errors. Do you see anything that he says in the course of that?
Verse 9 is very interesting that he talks about a wreath and necklace as something that we wear, almost like this is stuff that we wear on us so that when sinners entice us, we don't consent. That's just kind of how I read it. But.
So present ourselves in such a way that maybe we deflect some of what somebody might try to do to steer us in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just thought it was interesting that he talked about, like, physical, something you wear for, like, something that's,
It's
right.
tangible.
Yeah,
It's something.
tangible. Yeah, I couldn't
Sure.
think of that word.
Yeah, that's good. What else? Do you see any bits of divine wisdom? So let me give you three of them. The first one is remember your family heritage. How's that born out of the text? That's verse 8 and 9. What does Solomon say?
Basically, listen to your mother and father.
That's it. Listen to your mother and father. And I believe that Hiram touched on this in a sermon a couple of weeks ago. Maybe you remember this. Maybe we all wrestle with dismissing or discounting the teaching that we had in our home. Somewhere in your developmental stage, when you're developing your own faith, don't you have that moment where you go, I was taught this by my folks, and now as I study my Bible more, I see that really this was their opinion. It wasn't what the Bible said. Do you ever have a moment like that? Let me tell you the moment I had. I had 3 grown sons, 31, 29, and 27. I had a 29-year-old down the hall teaching the college class. When we were young parents, and again, this is happening in real time. You just try to make the best decisions you can. We made the decision. We believe I can't remember how we expressed it. That our 3 sons on Sunday morning would wear a suit and tie to church. Now, this would have been and some of you would be in the same age range as them, so you kind of remember what the timeline of when that would be in the early 2000s or whatever. Our premise there was, we want to emphasize in our home, give God your best, and present, and that's what we had heard, and we just kind of, you co-opt that and you take that, and so, dutifully, what could they do when they were younger? They wore that. As they got to be teenagers, they did what I did. And I began to ask my parents, hey, why can't I wear jeans to church? We had that discussion and so forth, which is funny. I guess because I became a preacher, every once in a while I wear jeans on Wednesday, but not on Sunday. But it's really just I don't know. It's what's in my closet. I guess, I'm sure. But our kids grew up and they had that conversation with us. Hey, you told us that this is what we needed to do, but really the Bible doesn't put an emphasis on that. You know what we said? You're right. We did the best we could. We tried to share with you, and you understand this as parents. You get one shot at it, and you want to be very thoughtful because the implications of the choices that you make are going to carry them into adulthood. Now, that seems like a very little thing, but you guys, most of you, maybe all of you, have not gotten to the teen years yet. You think you have challenges now, but when they really start to happen, you think about what kind of relationship you built with them, what kind of time you're giving to them so you can listen to them and so forth. But what Solomon is saying here is, while your parents are going to get it wrong from time to time, and you're still living in the wake of that, maybe even if you're 5, 10, 15 years away from your home, you still hear your mom's and your dad's voice in the background. Or maybe not even, if you're on the phone with them, maybe you hear it in the foreground, right? And what Solomon says is, it's one thing if your folks tell you something that contradicts what the Bible says. And in that case, Matthew 10:37, he that loves father and mother more than me is not worthy of me. But our job is to measure everything that everyone says through a divine filter. Acts 17 and verse 11. The great apostle Paul, an inspired preacher, is standing before the Bereans, and what Luke says is that the Bereans were noble because they searched the scriptures to see whether those things are so. Now, here's what happens in our public life, in our homes. We allow people to push values and ideas. Some of them are in the name of religion, and some of them are antithetical or in opposition to religion, and we don't push back. Maybe it's because we want to fit in. Maybe it's because we know that it might bear a cost in our lives. And what we've got to always do is dig into Scripture to fact check them. And I don't know your background. I know in every case here, I don't know what kind of religious orientation that you had. It would vary in this classroom as I look out. Maybe you didn't have much guidance in the home spiritually. A lot of us did. And the wisdom that we've got to avoid those unforced errors is to be able to weigh what should be followed and not discount it just because our parents said it and not call it gospel just because they said it. Now, it's a theme that's going to continue in the book of Proverbs. That Solomon is 26 times going to mention our relationship to our father. And by the way, 14 times a very similar statement is going to be made about your relationship with your mother. And here's what he says, and this is an assumption that your parents are going to be guiding you from a biblical framework. Okay, so we understand that when we look at Proverbs. He says, through this influence of the home, you gain understanding. Proverbs 4 and verse 1. You'll be guided, protected, and counseled. Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 20. You'll have good sense. Proverbs chapter 15 and verse 5. So most often in Proverbs, what he says is that when you listen to the counsel of your father, you will bring them honor. Now, why should that matter to you? As adults who have formed your own life and gone your own way, why should you care even now that what you do reflects well on your parents? As a Christian, why should that matter?
It's the first commandment with a promise.
Yeah, you think about the sixth commandment in the Decalogue of Moses, and that's what Paul is going to say in Ephesians chapter 6. Honor your father and mother, that it may be well with you, that you may live long upon the earth. This is the first commandment with a promise, and that's the promise right there. It makes our life better when we honor them. And of course, that looks different, right? We're not obeying them. We're not in submission to them, but we understand the family name. And we want to carry that on. You know, it's kind of like, did you ever get that advice that leave it better than you found it? There are going to be cycles in your home that you've got to break. Aren't there things that you saw in the home that you came from that you don't want to continue? We could break it into the different categories. It's things as benign as our diet, things about music, culture. Let me tell you about music. When I was growing up, my dad listened to Grand Ole Opry on whatever it is, 680, whatever it is, and bluegrass music. I hated bluegrass music. No offense to the state of Kentucky. I grew up and I had kids, and I got away from home about 10 years, and one day I was driving down the road and I had a black truck. Kathy always named my vehicles. That was Black Bullet. It was a custom deluxe Chevrolet. And I was driving down the road and had the boys with me. And the truck back, I don't know. Sorry, Grant, we didn't have any booster seats. We just had, the lap belts, and I had the boys in the truck with me. And we were driving down the road, and I put it on, or accidentally put it on bluegrass. And I got thinking, this stuff's not that bad. And I have become, don't judge me, I love bluegrass music. Why? Because my dad infected me when I was a kid, right? And I heard those things. But you think about all the facets of your home and how it impacts you. You are who you are because of the home that you came out of. Now you think about that if you're married this morning. Does that become a point of conflict? Because you came up in different homes from one another? And God expects you to blend those two things together. It's the traditions, it's the points of view, it's a wide range of things that God expects you to work through as you start doing the adult things of life for the rest of your life, like working and having kids. And so we may find some of their suggestions and their example in certain areas don't make the spiritual muster. But what Solomon is saying here is don't reject their wisdom for a poor and even a fatal substitution from the world. So before we leave this, what are some examples of family heritage that we are wise to carry on? and maybe this is from the background of your own home, some things that you saw in your home that it's wise to carry on.
Attending church, praying before meals.
Okay? All right, so let me key in on that for this moment, Holly. I put it faithful worship. Now, this may challenge us depending on what it is that you do for a living. And sometimes we have less control over that than others. But not choosing overtime or weekend shifts that disconnects us and keeps us from church. Maybe you have that influence in the home and you were told, look, you need to take care of your family. 1 Timothy chapter 5 and verse 8. But keep the kingdom first. And trust God to take care of you. And again, some professions don't allow for that. We have folks who are in this class who are first responders or in the medical field, and sometimes and that those things have to be happening. And Christians need to be among those who are doing that. But it's the choice. What am I building on? Am I building on a materialistic foundation? Am I choosing things? Maybe you heard that in your home. What else? Things that you were told in your home that's wise to carry on. And I promise if your parents are here, I won't tell them. Give them that credit.
Men being mature leaders of a family.
All right. Men being the spiritual leaders in the home. Certainly not a culture-honored principle. It's one that's very difficult. By the way, just a resource, Steve Farrar, the book was written years ago. It's called Point Man. And the very heart of that is the paramount need of men to be the spiritual leaders of the home. Men, we are going to be the ones who give an account for our family. Just read Ephesians 6 and verse 4. Read Colossians 3, verse 20 and 21. How about take a loss over taking advantage of others? To treat people with such respect and honor that you're not going to allow fear, stress, anxiety to cause you to cheat somebody, but you treat people fairly. How about keep your promises and keep your commitments on your job, in your personal life, to your family? Or how about, and I don't know if you grew up with this culture, maybe this is one that you create, have family Bible study and devotional time. Do it every day if you can. Those, and there are those in this room that I do premarital counseling for, that's something I always emphasize, the suggestions to make from the very first night of your marriage to make sure that you spend time together in the Word and in prayer. It may be that you're only in a car together for 5 minutes. Take that time. It doesn't have to be an hour. But make sure that you're touching base together with God every day. All right. That's the first wisdom to avoid unforced errors. Here's number 2. Avoid peer pressure. This is the heart of this paragraph, verse 10 through 15. And we're wise to connect this with the first one because Solomon is the one who's giving the guidance, and he's making a contrast between what God has given him, that he's giving to his son, and what the world is giving. So, why would we reject parental guidance and influence? Often, according to Solomon, it's because we choose foolish companions over them. Now, notice the subtle and dangerous negative that peer pressure is. The subtle danger of peer pressure is seen in who they are. He says, my son, if sinners, verse 10. Incidentally, this may surprise you, but the word sinner is not used very frequently in the book of Proverbs. The more frequent term, anybody know what it is? What's the big contrast?
Foolish.
The foolish. So that's the main word. But make no mistake about it, the fool is the sinner. But Solomon actually uses that word here. He says, my son is sinners. And he says, consider the source of who is trying to influence your life. And the sinner is going to try to influence your life. And God's the only one that gets to define sinner for us, and he does through Paul in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 33. Maybe you heard this one growing up. You grew up in church. Be not deceived. You know the rest of it, right? Evil. Maybe you grew up in a different congregation time than I did. I mean, every teen class seemed to have this. Evil companions corrupt good morals. Right? That's biblical truth. And Solomon is saying something like that. Consider the source. My son, if sinners, happens to us all every day. We're being asked to bow to the pressure of sinners. Now, second, it's seen in how it's done. My son, if sinners entice. This means to deceive or to make a fool out of someone. So is it not the case? Have you ever been in a situation where you reject the peer pressure of others and they try to make you feel like a fool, that's going to happen. But what Solomon says, what will actually happen is you will become a fool if you follow the pressure that they give. The warning is against their persuasion, against their deception. It's the persistent pushing and invitation to do things and to go places and to act ways that you know aren't right in order to receive the acceptance of the group. I used to think you outgrow that. I believe, older than ever, or at least there are only a couple of you that would be in my age range. And I thought that would go away. It never goes away. I used to have it. I heard it preached that peer pressure happens when you're teenagers and when you're young adults. And after that, it kind of goes away. It doesn't. I've watched people a generation older than me still giving in to it. Solomon's saying, consider how it's done. They entice you. And it's seen in what is said. If our moral compass is working properly, they're not going to be very persuasive with us. So what's the content of their message in the context here? What did the sinners say to Solomon's son? Or what is he warned they're going to say to him in the context? It's right there in front of you. What's their message in context here? I mean, just read what it says. What are the sinners saying, or what will the sinners say to Solomon's son? According to Solomon. Come get rich with us? How?
Shedding blood.
Okay, probably not something that you've dealt with in your professional life. But what's the point? Maybe don't shed blood, but what's the idea?
I think it's about taking advantage here.
Don't take advantage of others. All right, so let's put that again in the 21st century vernacular. Cut corners. Cheat the system. Get them before they get you. It's said and done 100 different ways, and it's not new to our time. It was going on in Solomon's day. Now, Solomon's father had said something very similar, right? In the very beginning of the book of Psalms, blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, or stands in the way of sinners, or sits in the seat of the scornful. If we had time, and I don't think we do, I don't have a clock, but just write in your notes, Proverbs chapter 4, and start reading in verse 14, and you see how Solomon just drives this home. Wisdom is about the ability to see the end and consequences of a belief and behavior and avoid it if it's wrong. We're going to see more about that in just a moment. But God draws a line in the sand for us. Psalm 119, verse 101. I have restrained my feet from every evil way, that I may keep your word. And nobody can be allowed to muddy those waters for us. It's attempted in your life every day by the people that come into it. Solomon says, don't give in to peer pressure. Here's the third principle that will keep us from foolish, unforced errors. It's in verse 16 through 19, and it actually goes to the end of the chapter. Recognize the end of sinful living. Wisdom comes in being able to see past the present and be able to see the consequences in the end of things. Remember Asaph in Psalm 73? He saw sinners who were prospering and their way was going great, and he was really in a funk. He was depressed because, the song we sing, tempted and tried, we're often made to wonder, why should be thus all the day long? While there are others living about us, never molested, though in the wrong. What's the point of the song? We're not in heaven. This isn't the end. We're looking ahead to when things are going to be made right. It's not right now. Farther along. That's when the reward comes. It's not right now. And so Asaph said, then I went into the house of the Lord, and then I understood the end of their ways. Solomon is saying something very similar here. He says, what they say is, let's go and let's take advantage of people who can't defend themselves, where you can get ahead at the expense of others. But what's the end of that? See the end of it. Don't trust the packaging, is what he says. Isaiah 5:20, another passage that we often use. Woe to those that call what? Good, evil, and evil good. Who put light for darkness, darkness for light, that put sweet for bitter, and bitter for sweet. That is so pervasive. It is the message of the culture. That basically what we're taught in Scripture is the right way to go, you're told is wrong. And what the Bible says is wrong, Scripture says that's the right way to do it. I mentioned here that Kathy and I will often try to find some series to stream. And we'll watch an episode or maybe two, or maybe a few. And it seems like almost every time. And then we're starting to learn this, by the way. They're trying to push a worldview. That's absolutely wrong to its core. We can't stay with it because it's the antithesis of everything that we profess and put as the foundation of our life. We need to recognize the end of that. And Solomon wants his son to see through this. He says their lifestyle is wrong and it's also self-defeating. Whoever else they hurt, they can't get away without suffering themselves. Notice the rest of the chapter. They're ensnared, verse 17. They ambush themselves, verse 18. They take their own lives spiritually. Spiritual suicide, verse 19. They may look successful right now, and they do, but try to see past the present and get a look into eternity. Some passages that are very familiar, James 4:4, 1 John 2:15 through 17. Love of the world, enmity with God, friendship with the world makes you an enemy of God. So Solomon does that in chapter 1. Now let me just do this with chapter 2. 3 things to do to have success. And what I want you to see, and let me just read Proverbs 2:1 through 5 very quickly, and then we'll look at what the things to do are to have that success. My son, if you will receive my words and treasure my commandments within you, make your ear attentive to wisdom, incline your heart to understanding. For if you cry for discernment and lift your a voice for understanding, if you seek for her as silver and search for her as for hidden treasures, then you will discern the fear of the Lord and discover the knowledge of God. All right, so what are the 3 things to do for success? Receive wise words. And what I want you to notice here is all the conditional statements. Do you see them? How do we know that they're conditional statements? If. All right, so notice the if statements. If you receive and treasure my instructions, verse 1. If you cry and shout for wisdom, verse 3. If you seek and search for her. We remind ourselves if we don't do these things, we don't get what's promised. But also notice this is not a half-hearted, going through the motions activity. It's got to be a genuine pursuit in our lives. All right, so receive wise words. Number 2, cry for discernment. Verse 3. We mentioned this in the beginning of class. It can be very difficult to know what's being said to us, whether it's right or whether it's wrong. And it's as simple as this. This is the filter. We run everything through Scripture to see what God has said about it. And so the more entrenched we are in the Word, the easier it is for us to have not just ultimate success, but believe it or not, it's the best way to live. What does Jesus say in John 10 and verse 10? I have come that you might have life and might have it more abundantly. Following these principles not only gives you heaven in the end, which is by itself enough, but it gives you the best opportunity to live the most successful life you can live on this earth. So it benefits us now and later. Man, what could you ask for more than that? And then the third thing is seek and search for wisdom like treasure. What's ironic in all of this is that Solomon himself is a cautionary tale. And this is the way I want to end class today. This is what Solomon is telling his son. And here's how Kings summarizes the end of his reign. This is 1 Kings 11. King Solomon loved many foreign wives, along with the daughter of Pharaoh, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, and Hittite women, from the nations concerning which the Lord said to the sons of Israel, you shall not associate with them, or shall they associate with you, for that will surely turn your heart away after their gods. Solomon held fast to these in love. He had 700 wives, princesses, 300 concubines, and his wives turned his heart away. For when Solomon was old, his wives turned his heart away after other gods, and his heart was not wholly devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of his father David had been. Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Milcom, the detestable gods of the Ammonites. Solomon did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and did not follow the Lord fully as his father David had done. He built a high place for Chemosh, the detestable idol of Moab, east of the mountain of Jerusalem, and Moab, the detestable idol of the sons of Ammon. This all he did for all of his foreign wives, who burned incense and sacrificed to their gods. And the Lord was very angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who appeared to him twice, and had commanded him concerning this, that he should not go after other gods. But he did not observe what the Lord had commanded. So the Lord said to Solomon, because you've done this, I'm going to take the kingdom away from you. The rest of the chapter says, I'm going to cause enemies to be raised in your life. Here's the point. You have so much of your life ahead of you to be practicing these principles, to set yourself up for success in every way, but you never, ever outgrow them. You can get to your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond and have embraced this throughout the prime of your life. And as you reach the golden years, and I've seen it happen so many times, turn away from it, and all of it, whatever you achieve in this life will be for nothing. So these words are the foundation for now and for the rest of your life. Solomon is going to give us so much that's going to help us today and as we build for our tomorrows. Thanks, guys, for your attention.